Heat exposure. That's what the file says. But heat exposure doesn't explain the pattern. On August 17, 2011, a search team ascending from Phantom Ranch discovered human remains partially concealed beneath a limestone overhang near the Bright Angel Trail. Dental records confirmed the individual, a 28-year-old ultramarathon runner who had vanished 6 weeks earlier during a routine training descent. The medical examiner cited hyperthermia as the probable cause. The conclusion seemed reasonable. The canyon claims lives through heat every year, yet the findings contradict what the search revealed. Because on July 3, 2011, this experienced runner had descended the South Kaibab Trail at dawn, a route he'd completed 17 times before. Temperature, 72 degrees at the rim. He carried 3 liters of water, electrolyte supplements, and a satellite beacon. He'd messaged his partner at Indian Garden, making good time, water levels good. When he failed to arrive at Phantom Ranch by noon, search operations mobilized. Professional teams deployed throughout the corridor using established protocols. What followed covered terrain most visitors never see. Teams combed every switchback between Indian Garden and the river. Standard methods that reliably locate lost hikers in similar terrain produced nothing. The search expanded across the Tonto platform. Days passed. Technology that functions elsewhere in the park detected no signal. Nothing. No water bottle. No phone. No beacon signal. No footprints past Indian Garden. Then, 43 days later, there he was. Not on any established trail, not near water. In a shaded alcove 400 feet above the Bright Angel Trail, terrain requiring technical climbing to access, in a section that had been aerially surveyed 4 times during the initial search. The facts accumulate in ways that resist alignment. The evidence that follows traces what happens in the Grand Canyon corridor, a vertical wilderness where the relationship between hunter and hunted has never been entirely clear. The Grand Canyon receives over 6 million visitors each year. The South Rim Village maintains visitor centers, museums, and restaurants. Paved walkways trace the rim for miles. Cell service reaches most overlooks. Shuttle buses run every 15 minutes during peak season. It's one of the most photographed landscapes on Earth. The corridor, the network of maintained trails connecting the north and south rims, represents the park's most developed backcountry infrastructure. The Bright Angel Trail, South Kaibab Trail, and North Kaibab Trail are engineered routes with regular maintenance. Rangers patrol daily. Rest houses provide shade and emergency phones. Water stations operate seasonally. Mule trains carry supplies and visitors twice daily. Thousands descend these trails annually, and the overwhelming majority complete their journeys without incident. The National Park Service employs over 400 personnel at Grand Canyon. Rangers conduct regular trail assessments. Search and rescue teams train monthly in technical rope work, wilderness medicine, and air operations. Helicopter landing zones are marked throughout the inner canyon. Emergency caches contain water, medical supplies, and communication equipment. Trail conditions are broadcast daily. Weather stations monitor temperature extremes. The park maintains one of the most sophisticated visitor safety programs in the national park system. On any given summer day, the Bright Angel Trail sees hundreds of hikers. Families photograph the canyon from Ooh-Ah Point. Day hikers reach Indian Garden and return. Experienced backpackers camp at Bright Angel Campground. Rim-to-rim runners complete the crossing in under 8 hours. Trail registers document this traffic. Most visitors experience nothing more concerning than sore legs and sunburn. The terrain presents documented challenges. Temperatures at the canyon floor regularly exceed 110 degrees Fahrenheit in summer. Elevation change from rim to river measures over 4,800 feet. Afternoon thunderstorms develop rapidly between July and September. Rockfall occurs along certain sections. Dehydration affects unprepared visitors. These factors are known, quantified, and addressed through education and infrastructure. Yet within this managed environment, certain observations have accumulated. Not folklore, not speculation. Documented incidents that cluster in patterns rangers have noted but cannot reconcile through standard explanations of terrain, weather, or visitor inexperience. The Grand Canyon corridor occupies a unique position in American wilderness. Unlike remote backcountry where disappearances might be attributed to isolation, This is infrastructure. Water sources are mapped. Trails are maintained. Traffic is constant during operating season. The vertical dimension creates specific challenges. Descending is deceptively easy. Gravity assists. Ascending requires 3 times the effort. The temperature differential between rim and river can exceed 40 degrees. But these factors affect everyone. They don't explain why certain cases follow patterns that diverge from standard lost hiker profiles. Between 2005 and 2013, 34 individuals were reported missing within the corridor for periods exceeding 24 hours. Of these, 28 were located. 6 remain unaccounted for. The 6 share specific characteristics that distinguish them from typical search scenarios. A 42-year-old wilderness guide with 15 years of Grand Canyon experience entered the corridor on May 12, 2007. He worked for a commercial rafting company and knew the terrain intimately. He'd hiked Bright Angel over 200 times. Weather conditions: clear, temperature 65 degrees at South Rim, 89 degrees at river level. He departed alone at 5:30 a.m. for a training hike, planning to reach the river and return the same day. He signed the trail register. 2 ascending hikers passed him near the 3-mile rest house at 7:15 a.m. They described him as moving efficiently, well-equipped, showing no signs of distress. By 8 p.m., when he failed to return, search operations began. Professional teams covered the trail throughout the night. The search continued for 5 days. Methods employed across hundreds of similar searches detected nothing below the 3-mile rest house. No pack, no water containers, no clothing items, no indication he'd left the trail. On May 29th, 17 days later, hikers reported a backpack lodged in vegetation near Ribbon Falls, 8 miles from Bright Angel Trail on the North Kaibab route. Contents confirmed it belonged to the missing guide. The pack showed no animal damage. Water bottles were full. Food remained sealed. A journal entry dated May 12th read, "Standard descent, nothing unusual. The guide has not been located." The distance between his last confirmed position and pack recovery requires either crossing the river, no crossings were reported, or ascending to the rim and descending a different trail. Neither scenario aligns with his stated route or timeline. A 34-year-old competitive trail runner disappeared on October 3, 2009. She held course records for several rim-to-rim routes. October weather is optimal. Temperatures moderate. Monsoon season concluded. She started from the North Rim at 6 a.m., intending to reach the South Rim by early afternoon. Clear conditions, temperature 58 degrees at departure. She checked in via satellite messenger at Cottonwood Campground. On pace. Feeling strong. The message transmitted at 9:47 a.m. She should have reached the river crossing at Phantom Ranch by 11:00 a.m. She did not arrive. Search operations mobilized by 3:00 p.m. Teams positioned at Phantom Ranch, along the North Kaibab Trail, and at likely rest points found no trace. The search expanded to include the Tonto Trail and adjacent drainages. An extended period of systematic coverage produced no evidence. No shoes, no running pack, no satellite device, no tracks beyond Cottonwood. On November 8, 36 days later, a Park Service trail crew discovered a running shoe on a ledge near Ribbon Falls, 4 miles from the North Kaibab Trail, in terrain 600 feet above the main route. The shoe matched her gear list. The location required scrambling up unstable scree. No clear reason existed for a runner on pace to deviate to that position. She remains missing. The ledge where the shoe was found had been visually surveyed during the initial search. Of the 6 individuals who remain missing, 4 were last confirmed on the North Kaibab Trail between Cottonwood Campground and Phantom Ranch. This 7-mile section accounts for less than 3% of the corridor's total trail mileage, but represents 67% of unexplained disappearances. The section traverses a narrow canyon called The Box, where walls rise vertically for hundreds of feet, and the trail parallels Bright Angel Creek through slots barely wide enough for 2 hikers to pass. Vegetation is dense. Seasonal water flow is loud enough to mask sound. Cell service is absent. Rangers have noted specific observations about this corridor within the corridor. A ranger with 12 years in the North Rim district described search operations in The Box. Sound behaves differently there. You can hear voices clearly from a quarter mile away when wind conditions align. Other times you can't hear someone calling from 30 feet. We've had team members lose verbal contact despite maintaining visual contact. During a 2008 search, 2 rangers positioned 200 feet apart along the trail reported they could not hear each other's whistles. Standard protocols require whistle signals at that distance be audible. Air temperature was stable, no unusual wind. The acoustic dead zone persisted for approximately 40 minutes, then resolved without environmental change. A search coordinator with 18 years of experience noted equipment anomalies. GPS units that function reliably elsewhere show position drift in the box. We've documented instances where units placed stationary on rocks register movement of up to 50 feet. Satellite communicators experience delayed transmission. Messages sent from the box sometimes do not relay until the user reaches Phantom Ranch, even with clear sky view. Radio communication within the box requires relay stations. Direct radio contact fails despite line-of-sight conditions. The Park Service installed a repeater system in 2006 specifically to address this communication gap. The Grand Canyon hosts documented apex predators. Mountain lions inhabit the rims and upper trails. California condors patrol the thermals. The fauna is known and studied, but certain observations don't align with cataloged wildlife behavior. On June 8, 2010, a trail maintenance crew working near Ribbon Falls photographed tracks in mud beside the creek. The prints measured 14 inches in length, showing 5 distinct toe impressions with a stride of approximately 5.5 feet. The depth suggested weight distribution exceeding 300 pounds. Rangers documented the prints and consulted with wildlife biologists. The morphology didn't match black bear, which rarely exceed 12-inch tracks and show 4 toes. The gait pattern wasn't consistent with deer, elk, or bighorn sheep. Mountain lions don't leave prints of that size. The tracks followed the creek for approximately 200 feet, then terminated at a rock face where tracking became impossible. They did not correspond with any established game trail. Between 2006 and 2012, 17 separate hiking parties reported unusual vocalizations in the box section of North Kaibab Trail. Descriptions were consistent. A sound described as between a whistle and a vocalization, lasting 3 to 5 seconds, repeating at intervals of 5 to 10 minutes. A backpacker camping at Cottonwood Campground in August 2009 recorded audio on a phone. The recording captures a sound that doesn't match cataloged calls of any documented canyon wildlife. Biologists who reviewed the recording noted the pitch and modulation pattern don't correspond with known bird species, coyotes or elk. The vocalizations have been reported exclusively between dusk and dawn, primarily during months when visitor traffic is lightest. Search teams working in the box have noted scent anomalies on multiple occasions. A ranger described it during a 2007 search. A smell like decomposition but wrong, sharper, almost sulfuric. It was localized to maybe a 50-yard section of trail. We documented it because it suggested we might be near remains, but we found nothing. The smell dissipated within an hour. 4 other search operations in the same geographic area documented similar scent reports. In each case, the smell appeared suddenly, persisted briefly, then vanished without identified source. The Park Service employs trained search dogs for missing person operations. These animals work reliably across varied terrain and conditions. Their behavioral patterns during searches are predictable, except in the box. During a search operation on April 15, 2008, a certified search dog with 5 years of field experience refused to work a section of trail between Cottonwood and Phantom Ranch. The handler described the dog's behavior. She tracked normally until we reached the narrow canyon section. Then she stopped, sat down, and would not move forward. No amount of encouragement changed her behavior. She showed no aggression, no fear response, just absolute refusal. The handler detoured 200 yards up canyon, reapproached the same section from the opposite direction. The dog again refused to enter the specific corridor. A different search operation in September 2009 utilized 2 dogs working the same trail from opposite directions, one ascending from Phantom Ranch, one descending from Cottonwood. Both dogs exhibited confusion at the same geographic point, a section of trail near Ribbon Falls Junction. Both handlers independently noted their dogs circling, showing head-shaking behavior and reluctance to commit to a direction. Neither dog showed this behavior in any other section of the trail during that operation. A third dog, working a November 2010 search, showed distress behaviors in the box that handlers had never observed from that animal. Excessive panting despite cool temperatures, tucked tail, low head carriage, and frequent stopping to look behind. The dog had successfully completed searches in more challenging terrain without such behaviors. The handler pulled the dog from the search after 2 hours, noting, "This isn't normal caution. This is something I've only seen when dogs detect an immediate threat." But there was nothing visible that would trigger that response. The Grand Canyon's heat is quantified and predictable. Summer temperatures at the canyon floor consistently exceed 105 degrees Fahrenheit. This is documented, expected, and addressed through education and infrastructure. Heat-related incidents follow predictable patterns. They occur during summer months, primarily between 10:11 a.m. and 4:00 p.m., almost exclusively involving day hikers who underestimate water needs. The 6 unexplained disappearances don't fit this pattern. 2 occurred in October, when temperatures are moderate. 3 occurred in May, during optimal hiking conditions. 1 occurred in December. None occurred during peak heat season. 3 of the individuals carried satellite communication devices that showed no distress signals. 2 were carrying more water than recommended minimums. All 6 were experienced in Grand Canyon conditions, not first-time visitors susceptible to heat underestimation. The medical examiner's conclusion of heat exposure in the case that opened this examination, the ultramarathon runner found 43 days after disappearing, presents specific contradictions. The remains were located in shade, at an elevation where temperatures are 15-20 degrees cooler than the canyon floor. The runner had disappeared in early July but was found in a location that receives no direct sunlight after 10 a.m. His water supply at last contact was adequate. Heat exposure requires specific conditions: direct sun exposure, physical exertion, depleted hydration. None of these conditions align with the recovery location or the individual's documented experience level. The Grand Canyon's terrain is vertical. This creates specific constraints. A hiker on the Bright Angel Trail cannot spontaneously appear on the North Kaibab Trail without covering measurable distance through documented waypoints. Yet recovery locations contradict route logic. The wilderness guide whose pack was found at Ribbon Falls would have needed to leave the Bright Angel Trail at an unobserved point, cross the Colorado River. No crossings were reported to river guides working that day. Ascend to the North Rim. No sightings at North Rim facilities. Descend the North Kaibab Trail. No trail register signature. Deviate to Ribbon Falls. This requires 18 to 22 miles of travel through terrain where multiple observation points exist. No one reported seeing him. The trail runner, whose shoe was found 600 feet above the North Kaibab Trail, would have needed to deviate from her stated route, scramble up unstable scree, access a ledge with no clear route, leave a single shoe in a position that serves no logical purpose. She was running on pace, feeling strong, with no reason to deviate. The Grand Canyon contains extensive cave systems. Some are catalogued and gated, others remain unmapped. The Redwall limestone formation is particularly porous, containing solution cavities, passages, and chambers. In 1909, an expedition allegedly discovered a large cavern system in the canyon walls. The Phoenix Gazette published the account, describing chambers with artifacts suggesting ancient habitation. The Smithsonian Institution has no record of this discovery. The exact location was never verified. Local indigenous knowledge, from the Havasupai, Hualapai, and Navajo peoples who have inhabited this region for centuries, includes references to the canyon's hidden spaces. Some areas are considered off-limits, places where the boundary between the surface world and something beneath becomes uncertain. Rangers working in the corridor report occasional observations of openings in cliff faces, gaps in the rock that suggest voids beyond. Most are inaccessible without technical climbing. Some appear to change, visible during certain light conditions, hidden in others. During the 2007 search for the Wilderness Guide, a ranger noted in their log air current from a gap in the Redwall at approximately mile 6 marker. Cool air, steady flow, suggesting a void of significant size. Location makes access impractical without specialized equipment. Whether these voids connect, whether they provide passage through terrain that appears impossible on the surface, remains undocumented. The underground dimensions of the Grand Canyon are less understood than its visible profile. Among the vocalizations reported in the box, one pattern stands out for its specificity and consistency. Hikers moving through the narrow sections between Cottonwood and Phantom Ranch, particularly near Ribbon Falls, have described a sound they characterize as the whistler. Not a bird call, not wind through rocks, a whistle that sounds intentional, human-like in pitch and rhythm, but occurring in locations where no other hikers are present. A backpacker in June 2008 described it. "I was alone on the trail, about 2 miles from Phantom Ranch. I heard a whistle behind me, like someone trying to get my attention. I turned around. Nobody there. I kept walking. 5 minutes later, another whistle, same pitch, same duration. I stopped and called out. No response. This pattern continued for about 20 minutes. The whistle stayed the same distance behind me, matching my pace." Another hiker in October 2009. "The whistle came from up canyon above the trail. I thought maybe someone was on a ledge trying to signal, but when I looked there was nothing but cliff face. No accessible position where someone could stand. The whistle repeated 3 more times, always from the same direction, always above." A trail runner in March 2010. "It paced me. I'd speed up, the interval between whistles shortened, I'd slow down, the interval lengthened, like whatever was making the sound was adjusting to maintain a specific distance. The acoustic properties of the box create echoes and distortions. Sound bounces off rock faces, making source location difficult. But the consistency of these reports, the description of intelligence in the pattern, the sense of being tracked or signaled, appears across different seasons, different visitors, different conditions. None of these individuals reported seeing anything associated with the whistling. Beyond tracks and vocalizations, certain physical traces don't align with known wildlife patterns. Rangers have documented trees along the North Kaibab Trail showing unusual bark damage, vertical gouges at heights of 7 to 9 feet, in patterns suggesting deliberate marking rather than animal rubbing or natural weathering. The spacing and depth are consistent across multiple trees within the box section. Rock cairns, stacks of stones, appear occasionally in locations away from established trails. Most are attributed to visitors, but some appear in positions that require technical access, places casual hikers cannot reach. The purpose of these markers, if intentional, remains unclear. During a 2011 trail maintenance operation, workers found a collection of deer bones arranged in a pattern near Ribbon Falls. The bones were weathered but showed no scavenger marks. The arrangement, a rough semicircle approximately 4 feet in diameter, didn't match any natural accumulation pattern. Wildlife scatter bones. Water flow displaces them. The configuration suggested intention. When rangers returned 3 days later to photograph the site more thoroughly, the bones had been removed. No human traffic had been reported in that location during the intervening period. These observations span nearly a decade of documented incidents. They don't resolve into explanation. Heat exposure accounts for some cases, but not the spatial contradictions. Wildlife explains some tracks, but not the measurements. Acoustic anomalies explain some sound reports, but not the behavioral consistency. What connects them is geography. The box. The 7-mile section of North Kaibab Trail where sound behaves inconsistently, where electronics malfunction, where search dogs refuse to work, where experienced hikers deviate from routes without explanation. The Grand Canyon corridor remains one of the most heavily trafficked wilderness areas in North America. Thousands traverse it safely. The infrastructure functions. The Ranger Service maintains protocols. And within this managed environment, a subset of incidents resists standard explanation. Not through dramatic strangeness, but through the quiet accumulation of details that do not align with what should happen in terrain. This documented, this accessible, this known. Across 9 years, 6 documented disappearances within the Grand Canyon corridor share specific characteristics that distinguish them from typical lost hiker scenarios. The geographic concentration in the box section of the North Kaibab Trail, representing 67% of unexplained cases within 3% of total trail mileage, suggests a pattern localized to terrain with documented anomalies. Search technologies that function reliably throughout the rest of Grand Canyon National Park encounter specific challenges in this corridor: GPS drift, communication failure, acoustic dead zones. Search dogs trained to work in challenging environments show behavioral responses in the box that handlers describe as atypical. Recovery locations contradict route logic. Individuals appear in terrain that requires traversing documented waypoints without being observed. Standard explanations account for individual elements. Heat affects unprepared hikers, but most of these cases occurred during moderate weather. Terrain challenges searchers, but the box is a maintained trail with regular traffic. Wildlife can obscure evidence, but the track measurements and vocalization patterns don't match catalogued species. Acoustic properties distort sound, but the consistency of Whistler reports suggests pattern rather than random echo. The gaps between what happened and what should have happened in terrain this accessible, this documented, this regularly traveled, those gaps persist. The Grand Canyon corridor remains open to millions of visitors annually. The Bright Angel Trail, South Kebab Trail, and North Kebab Trail operate as they have for decades. Rangers maintain their protocols. Search and rescue teams continue training. The infrastructure functions exactly as designed. Most visitors experience nothing more unusual than magnificent views and physical exertion. And within this framework of normalcy, the box continues to accumulate observations that resist alignment with standard wilderness incident patterns. Not through sensational occurrence, but through the quiet persistence of details that don't resolve, tracks that don't match, sounds that follow without source, locations that contradict routes, dogs that refuse terrain they're trained to work. If you found this examination useful, consider supporting the work by subscribing to the channel. New documentaries are released regularly, each following the same measured, evidence-focused approach. If you have documented cases, ranger testimony, or relevant observations about the Grand Canyon corridor or similar locations, you're invited to share them in the comments. Sometimes the careful accumulation of details is what moves understanding forward. Even when those details refuse to form conclusions, the facts continue to accumulate, the explanations continue to fall short, and the box, a 7-mile section of maintained trail through a canyon seen by millions, continues to hold something that documentation has not yet fully captured. The corridor remains as accessible as it is unexplained.